Last October, my group of friends and I visited a local park that opens every year. It was located on the edge of town, right next to the forest, and had 3 attractions: the main haunted house, a corn maze, and a haunted trail through the forest. We started with the haunted house, which was of high quality and provided some good scares. We then made our way to the corn maze, which started slowly with lots of twists and turns through the corn. But soon, the eerie tricks began. A man dressed as a terrifying scarecrow emerged from the corn and shouted at us, causing us to scream in response. He started chasing us, so we ran away. I found myself at the back, with the scarecrow right behind me. Even though I knew he was just an actor, I couldn't help but feel an instinctual fear of being pursued. Amidst the adrenaline rush of escaping through the corn, I lost sight of my friends. It seemed like we all ran in different directions. The scarecrow's voice faded away, and I found myself back on the path between the corn stalks. This is where the nightmare began. I called out and screamed for my friends as I took one wrong turn after another. But there was no response. In fact, there seemed to be no other visitors in sight. With no other choice, I had to navigate the maze on my own. I walked for what felt like an eternity, growing tired and anxious. Suddenly, I heard rustling in the corn ahead of me. I slowed down and cautiously passed by the noise, but it was futile. Something reached out from the corn, grabbed my wrist, and squeezed it tightly. I cried out in pain and shouted, "Stop! You're hurting me!" I was genuinely shocked by the force with which this actor gripped my wrist. Then he attempted to pull me into the cornfield. I couldn't see his face. All I saw was his hand and arm covered by a black coat sleeve and black glove. I managed to break free from his grasp and retreated as the actor emerged from the cornfield onto the path. He was wearing a heavy winter coat, black jeans, and a featureless black face mask. I didn't understand the purpose of this costume, but I yelled, "Leave me alone! I'm going to report you!" He started running towards me, so I instinctively turned and sprinted through the corn to lose him. As I ran, I shouted that I would call the police. After about 5 minutes of running straight through the corn, instead of following the designated paths, I finally lost him. I reached the edge of the maze and hurriedly made my way to the park's office. I sought out a manager and recounted what had happened with the man who had been following and attacking me. The manager informed me that none of their performers wore that specific outfit, so he promptly called the police. Eventually, my friends found me at the office. I stayed to provide a detailed account to the police when they arrived. Although I had no visible injuries, they still took a report and assured me that they would investigate the matter. I returned home terrified, and this was the last time I would go to this scary place. I was excited to attend this year's Halloween party. The party was held in an old palace on the outskirts of the city, and the hosts were known for throwing lavish parties. I had been looking forward to this night for weeks and had spent hours putting together my clothes. When I arrived at the palace, I was greeted by the sounds of music and laughter. The atmosphere was lively, and I felt excitement building within me. The mansion was decorated with cobwebs, lanterns, and creepy lighting that added to the spooky atmosphere. I mingled with the other guests, admired their costumes, and enjoyed the festive spirit. But as night fell, strange things began to happen. Lights flickered, and disturbing whispers echoed throughout the halls. The once lively party has taken on a dark and sinister tone. I tried to shake off the uncomfortable feeling that was creeping over me, but it became stronger. As I walked through the palace's winding corridors, I noticed that some rooms appeared to be closed. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate further. As I approached one of the closed doors, my heart hammered in my chest. Something felt off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't supposed to be there. But my curiosity got the better of me, and I turned the door handle. The room was dark, and I could barely see its contents. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized there was a figure standing in the corner. It was a tall, shadowy figure with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce my very soul. I tried to escape, but my feet refused to move. The figure began to move towards me slowly, its movements unnatural and disjointed. He spoke in a voice that chilled me to the bone, promising unspeakable horrors. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air, interrupting our meeting. It was a blood-curdling scream that sent shivers down my spine. I knew something was terribly wrong. When I left the room, I found myself in a scene of chaos. The once festive party had turned into a nightmare with guests running screaming in every direction. The palace was no longer decorated with cobwebs and lanterns, but was now covered in blood and gore. I knew something had gone terribly wrong, and I had to get out of there as quickly as possible. But as I was making my way towards the exit, I felt a presence behind me. He was this mysterious person before, and now he was approaching me with unyielding determination. My heartbeat quickened as I ran toward the door, but it was too late. This figure was on top of me, his cold fingers wrapped around my neck. As my vision faded into the darkness, I realized I had fallen into a trap set by my friends who wanted to play a sick joke on all of us. It was Halloween night. Jack was walking home after a night out with his friends. The full moon shone bright in the dark sky. As Jack strolled down the empty street, the wind picked up, sending chills down his spine. In the distance, Jack spotted a dark figure standing under a street lamp. As he got closer, he could see it was a man, dressed in a long black coat with a wide-brimmed hat. The man's face was obscured by shadow. "Hello there," Jack called out, but the strange man did not respond. An uneasy feeling crept over Jack. Just then, the street lamp flickered and went out, plunging the street into darkness. When the light came back on, the man was gone. Jack quickened his pace. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement in the bushes. He whirled around, but nothing was there. Then he heard footsteps approaching from behind. His pulse racing, Jack broke into a run. The footsteps grew faster, closer. Jack ran with all his might, not daring to look back. He rounded a corner and collided with something solid. Jack screamed as he realized it was the dark figure from under the street lamp. Up close, Jack could see the man's face was a glowing white skull. Its empty black eye socket stared at Jack as the bony jaws opened in a horrific grin. It was the last thing Jack saw before everything went black. The abandoned house at the end of the street was looming over the neighborhood like a dark shadow. Its windows were broken and boarded up, its porch was falling apart, and its overgrown garden was full of leaves and debris. It had been empty for years. All the children in the neighborhood were challenging each other to go inside on Halloween. They said it was haunted by the ghosts of the family that used to live there, but no one had ever gone past the front door. This Halloween, I decided I would be the first. I grabbed a flashlight and walked up the cracked sidewalk to the house. The front door creaked as I pushed it open. The hallway was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. I shone my flashlight around, half expecting to see a ghostly figure lurking in the shadows. I made my way from room to room. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust and dirt. The furniture was falling apart, and broken toys and dishes were scattered across the floors, but there were no signs of ghosts or hauntings. I climbed the creaky stairs to the second floor. The bedrooms were just as abandoned and decayed as the rooms below. I was just about to leave when I heard a noise coming from one of the closets. I slowly opened the door and shone my flashlight inside. Sitting on the floor was an old dusty teddy bear. As I picked it up, I noticed it had a note pinned to its chest. The note read, "Thank you for visiting. Happy Halloween." I smiled, realizing that the house wasn't haunted after all, just waiting for someone to bring it back to life, if only for one night. I put the teddy bear in my bag and walked back into the night, feeling braver than I had when I arrived. John's fascination with abandoned places began years ago, ever since he first stumbled upon the old Miller house deep in the forest behind his childhood home. He was only 12 at the time, but he felt an instant connection to the crumbling ruin. Over the years, he sought out every derelict building he could find, forgotten farmhouses, deserted factories, rotting mansions. He felt strangely at peace wandering their empty halls, imagining what secrets lay buried beneath the dust and decay. When John heard rumors that the long-abandoned Victorian mansion on Raven's Hill was haunted, he knew he had to see it for himself. The house was even more decrepit up close, looming over the dead landscape like a giant tombstone. The windows were black holes staring back at John as he crept across the porch and slipped inside. The air was heavy with the stench of rot and mildew. John's flashlight cut through the inky darkness, illuminating a grand staircase blanketed in cobwebs. He ascended cautiously, the steps groaning under his weight. The second-floor hallway stretched into endless shadow. John's breath quickened as he tiptoed past door after door, each barely hanging from rusty hinges. What tragic memories lingered here? One door stood firmly shut. Gripping the handle, John steeled his nerves and turned it. The door creaked open. John's flashlight revealed a canopied bed, moth-eaten curtains, a dressing table, and in the corner, a tall figure watching him. John froze. The apparition's eyes were two black voids as it drifted toward him. The air grew icy cold. Shadowy arms reached for John's throat as the phantom's mournful wail pierced his ears. John turned and fled blindly. He stumbled down the stairs, through the web-filled rooms, bursting outside, gasping for air. He jumped on his bike and pedaled madly, but he could still feel the ghost's presence close behind, grasping, haunting. John pedaled his bike furiously down the moonlit back roads, desperate to escape the wrath of the vengeful spirit. But no matter how fast he rode, he could not shake the feeling that it was right behind him, reaching out with its shadowy claws. Exhausted, John finally arrived home. He rushed upstairs to his bedroom and slammed the door, pushing his dresser in front of it as a barricade. He sat huddled on his bed, listening intently for any sounds of the phantom. Outside, the wind howled violently. Tree branches scratched against his window like bony fingers. John squeezed his eyes shut, trying to calm his pounding heart. Just as he began to relax, thinking the ghost had not followed him home, there was a slow creaking sound from his closet. John's eyes shot open. The closet door drifted open, and a dark figure drifted out. John pressed himself against the wall in terror as the ghost hovered toward him. A rotting stench filled the air. He opened his mouth to scream, but only a choked gasp came out. The phantom was upon him now, its face just inches from his own. John trembled uncontrollably as an icy hand caressed his cheek. The ghostly lips parted, and a raspy voice uttered his name. John. John's voice returned in that moment. He let out a blood-curdling scream of pure terror, but it was too late. The ghost's shadowy form enveloped him, plunging him into darkness. When John's parents rushed into his room, they found him lying motionless on the bed, eyes staring blankly ahead. He was still breathing, but his mind was shattered. John remained in a catatonic state, trapped forever in the grasp of the vengeful phantom. The mansion on Raven's Hill remained abandoned, waiting for its next victim.